Continuing my resume, I want to explain that I'm an ex-convict. In 1974, I was convicted in the state of Florida for burglary, grand larceny, and possession of burglary tools, and later convicted in the state of New York for armed robbery. So I've been convicted for felony crimes in 2 different states. And I was released from prison in 1978 after serving 3.5, nearly 4 years inside a prison, both in Dannemora, New York, and in Rayford, Florida. And I want you to know that. Since 78, I've been clean. One of the things that was said by my manager, my prison guard in Auburn State Prison at 135 State Street in Auburn when I was released, and he had made me the manager of the bake shop. I ran the entire bake shop. I ran all the baking for the entire prison, some 3,000 prisoners there in Auburn. And when I was released, and he said to the parole board and to me as I walked out, and all the men cheered me as I took my bag and walked out that day, he said, "You'll never see him in prison again." That's what the prison guard said about me. Continuing my resume, Mr. Richard Stauffer, who was my prison guard in Rayford State, Florida, state prison in Florida, he gave me his class. He was a social studies teacher. And he was teaching young men how to get their GED. He turned his entire school over to me, and I ran the class and teaching men how to get their GED. A couple other things as well I want to put in as I put my resume forward. I tell you why Elizabeth and I still live in Harlem. I wake up in Harlem after 35 years. Elizabeth and I wake up in Harlem in a building that has a homeless shelter and a community kitchen. I want you to know that I am a brother. I want you to know that, though the lies that have been told against me and the unusual sausage brain hatred leveled towards me is absolutely on Mars in terms of how ridiculous it is. I wake up in a building that has a homeless shelter for the past 35 years. My wife and I, the beautiful, wonderful Elizabeth Sarah Manning. I don't run to the white neighborhoods like people who get money and can afford to leave and not live around black people because they know they're crazy, they're violent, they're murderers, they're thieves, and so they don't want to live around. I'll come to that a little bit more. But I want to say one other thing as well, is that while in prison, I told you that Louis Farrakhan came to Rayford Union Correctional Facility, and the little imam, the Muslim there, introduced him there. I went out there on the yard today to hear what he had to say. And then sometime later, Richard Stauffer, who came later and preached in this church because he was curious as to what happened to me after I left Rayford Prison. And we contacted, and he's got a church down now in the central part of Ocala, Florida, where I believe he's a Methodist pastor. And he put me up to holding a debate after Louis Farrakhan came to Rayford State Prison and held his meeting out there. And Elijah Muhammad had just died. And so Mr. Stauffer put me and this imam, this Muslim imam who was leading all the Muslims in the prison. And anytime he had to connect with Louis Farrakhan in those years, he was pretty powerful inside the prison. But Richard Stauffer put me up to debate with him, and I debated with him on one Saturday. It was all the prisoners came to hear me debate. What I want to point out, even when I was in prison, I was more powerful, more popular, a greater preacher and spokesperson than I am now. I debated the Muslim that brought Louis Farrakhan, and I won. I won that debate. And I did the same thing in Comstock Prison with the imam in the Comstock Prison. I was not a nobody. I was not a regular Joe Blow inside the prison, just like I'm not a nobody now. But I want to tell you the reason why I've discovered, the reason why this is important today. Why did I win the debate with this imam who had all of this power? He was associated with Louis Farrakhan. Why did I win the debate against the imam in Comstock? And the few men that were following him every day started following me. And the reason being, I want you to listen to this very carefully, because I didn't know why I won those debates and why I was more powerful than the Muslims. And I never bowed down to them. I was saved by the Lord Jesus Christ. But the reason why I was this is that when you argue with a Muslim who was basically just a black man with a phony religion, his arguments never go beyond the white man did me wrong. It never goes beyond that. And he'll throw out a little bit of religion. He'll throw out a little bit of history about slavery, Emmett Till, and he'll throw out a little Muhammad Ali. But the thing that you have to realize about the black man is that his brains, his understanding never elevates above the white man did me wrong. And see, when I argued when I held our debate with the Muslim in Rayford, who had just entertained Louis Farrakhan, the reason why I won, I didn't realize, but my argument was beyond the white man. Okay, you want to talk about the white man doing us wrong? We're all here. But my argument went beyond that. My argument went to philosophy, it went to science, it went to physics, and it went to astronomy. But my argument also went to literature and to Bible and to understanding of world religions. So once he could not compete with me in anything other than white man did me wrong, white man did me wrong, white man the blue-eyed devil, white man, white man, white man. But you start talking philosophy and you start talking historical context, or you even start talking the depths of the Bible, he's lost. Any black man, even if you're talking to Eddie Glaude and I debated with Cornel West. I was a student. I debated with him and I won that debate. The reason why is because his brain does not allow him. Now, Cornel West has a PhD, obviously, but the problem is with him is that he also can't argue against the white man did me wrong. Though he understands the classics, he's incapable of taking the argument beyond that. And that's why I was able to win and able to lead and become a very powerful person. So much so while I was in prison that even the prison guards gave me every opportunity possible. And Richard Stauffer asked, has anybody ever heard of that James Manning? And somebody told him at one of the seminaries that I was preaching in New York City. I want to point that up. I want to demonstrate. And so I've also discovered the reason why the sausage brain black man doesn't understand me and doesn't respond to me is because his understanding is only the white man did me wrong. And he does not understand the higher or greater principles. He doesn't understand that. And I'll give Dr. King this. When he started with the nonviolence of the Buddhist idea of Mahatma Gandhi, most Christians didn't understand that either. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just showing you the parallel between people cannot rise in their intellectual strengths and abilities to understand a dynamic other than, if you're black, the white man did you wrong. And you can ask any black man, Eddie Glaude, you can ask Michael Eric Dyson, you can ask Al Sharpton, you can ask Barack Obama ain't black. Their theses, their brains will not process anything other than white man did me wrong. And even if they just can't, they're incapable, they're ignorant to anything beyond that process. And that's why I was able to win and be so successful in prison. Now, I want this to be understood. I'm an ex-convict, and for 40 years I've been a pastor. I don't have to live in this community. And preachers don't. They don't live in this community. They move to Westchester County or they're New Jersey, Bergen. They live out Long Island, but they don't live in Harlem because they don't want to live. It's unsafe to live around in a ghetto community. I think Jesse Jackson said it himself that, walking the streets of a ghetto at 2 o'clock in the morning and hear his footsteps behind him, and he's so relieved when he turns around and find out that the people behind him are white. It's dangerous living in the ghetto. But I wake up, and I've been waking up in this community for the past 37 years. And my beautiful wife, we wake up in this community every morning. We don't wake up in white Westchester County or Sleepy Hollow. We don't wake up in the prestigious neighborhood surrounding New York City. We wake up. And in the building where, I'm trying to show you that the very fact that my love and my fidelity, even the black, he fails to understand that. He fails to see that as leadership. He fails to see that as, brother, I'm with you. I'm not against you. I'm with you. He can't see it. He can see me getting out of my car, see me walking this building, see it, but his intellectual, spiritual strengths will not allow him to see that I'm with him. Black Lives Matter ain't with him. Listen, Michael Jordan ain't with him. Michael Jordan ain't gonna live it. I'm guarantee you, I bet my seat in heaven right now, you cannot find one athlete, one major person that has made it well, who's rich, or Jay-Z, or any of them that lives in the ghetto. They don't do it. They don't do it. You know, you can't find one. The moment they get the money, they do black flight. You know why? Because they don't want to live around you, black man. They don't want to live around you. And the other thing, which I think is even more detrimental than the fact they don't want to live around you, is that they don't want to be black. They realize what a scourge it is to be a black man. Because a black man, he's never built anything. He's destructive. His mindset is all warped. They don't want to be black. And the reason why they hate white folk at the level and why Black Lives Matter, the reason why and you take a guy like Michael Jordan or somebody who's got all that money, or LeBron James, and they're angry with white folk. And the reason why they're angry with white folk is because they know that no matter how much money they get, no matter how big the house, how white the house is that they buy and the birds, they still aren't equal to whites. They know that. They know even a poor man, a white man, has a better chance at life than they do with all their money, and they can't rectify it. They can't, and so it becomes a continual boiling cauldron of hate. You got these rich black folk living in these white neighborhoods hating the hell out of white folk because even though they got the money, they still don't find themselves to be equal. It is, and the reason being is because he doesn't have a community. You know, if you're going to be a man from a particular race, your race has got to represent something in order for you to represent. Just because you made enough money to get out of the hood don't mean you're not still looked upon as in the hood. I would feel like an absolute stark, raving, naked fool if I moved out of Harlem to some white neighborhood. I feel like some sort of fool. My community, my people aren't living in such neighborhoods. My people aren't living in such houses. So why am I? Because it would be evident that I escaped black neighborhood, that I escaped Harlem and got out of it because I don't want to be like the black people. Well, that's what the white man sees when he sees Michael Jordan and LeBron James. They moved out the neighborhood too because they don't want to be like black people. They are saying in what they purchase, where they live, who they marry, that they don't want to be black. They don't want to be black. That's why they leave the black neighbor. They leave the community of the blacks. Now they're Hamites, is who they are. But they're saying by their purchasing, by their lifestyle, I don't want to be like them. I want to be like the white man. He's a Japheth. And so that's why they move. And that's the story. So I thought I would share that with you as I continue to share my resume. You should have seen me when I was in prison. I was 24 hours, 7. I was showing a preacher, man, no doubt about it, winning every argument and not intimidated by the Muslims or their argument, or Louis Farrakhan when he came to the prison. And every prison, even though when I worked on the chain gang, they took me off the chain gang because they saw me sitting around talking to the men at lunchtime and said, we can get something better out of him than have him work on the chain gang. Let's put him in the school to teach. Let's have him teach these men who didn't get an education. Let's have him teach these men who robs and murders in their own neighborhood. And the one thing that I did get arrested for, I didn't get arrested for robbing a black house. I got arrested on a Miami Beach. That's right. And so they said, this man has a value. Let's put him in and let him talk. And my class was filled. I had a packed house every day. When I got to the classroom, they were waiting for me to teach. And then I became the leader of the bake shop up in Auburn State Prison. You can check, it's all on the record. It's all on the record. Never lost an argument. Won every argument against the Muslim. Turned people into Christians while I was in prison. But I wake up to show you who I am and show you who Michael Jordan is, or LeBron James, or Black Lives Matter. I wake up in Harlem. In the building I wake up in, there's a homeless shelter. Now, let me quickly say, the people in the homeless shelter are not violent. They're not people who I don't consider my sisters and my brothers. I love them. I love them, but it's still yet a homeless shelter. It is. I guarantee you, you ain't gonna get Jay-Z. I guarantee you, you ain't getting none of these people who got money gonna sleep in a building that has a homeless shelter. I guarantee you, they ain't black. They're not that black. They ain't black enough to sleep in a homeless shelter. No, no, no. Or a community kitchen. Hell no. They ain't gonna do that. Not with the money they got. They ain't sleeping in no homeless shelter. I have one next to, you can walk out your door and 2 feet later you're in a homeless shelter. No, they ain't gonna do that. They won't be around that kind of black foolishness, ignorance. They wanna be white. They wanna be successful. I'm gonna continue my resume going forward. I've not expressed it perhaps as fully as I ought or as I should. But I can tell you this, anytime, and anybody who wants to argue with the black man, he is incapable of anything other than the white man did us wrong. He doesn't know how to argue a philosophical argument. He cannot argue an astrological argument. He cannot argue a scientific argument. He can't even argue a political argument. His politics are always about black. That's why Black Lives Matter has become such an anthem. His sausage brain cognitive tension is incapable. Now, God has sent me to him. God has sent me to him, and I'm going to stay with him. I'm going to live with him. I'm going to help him, and I'm going to teach him. I'm going to elevate him. But you need to understand, and now I know, and God told me, this is why you were so successful in prison. Because even though he was the imam, or they were powerful Muslims, or Louis Farrakhan, they don't have an argument above black man being mistreated by the white man. That's the end of their understanding. Me. I'm James David Manning, everybody. I'm the Lord's servant. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.